At around 6 o'clock in the morning, the Germans signed the armistice papers, which meant the Great War, the war to end all wars, was actually going to finish at 11 o'clock on the 11th of November 1918. News quickly travelled, and Trafalgar Square started to fill with people.
Children behind me are celebrating the end of World War I, and they are commemorating this in exactly the same manner that was being done 100 years ago.
Those celebrations flowed down Westminster and eventually into Downing Street. Now, when they got to Downing Street, they chanted and wanted the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister came out to speak before 11 o'clock and told the crowd that at 11 o'clock the war would be over.
As the war's coming to an end in 1918, this ship was still down in the Aegean. The guys on board this little ship had actually joined her in June 1915, and incredibly, they were still on her in 1918 when they were finally relieved and allowed to come back.
This war to end all wars affected everybody in Great Britain, young and old, women and men alike.
Of the 5 million that mobilised, around about 700,000 were killed. They didn't come back. More than that, 1.6 to 1.7 million soldiers were injured. Anybody in the UK knew somebody who had been involved and was affected by the First World War.
So at the end of the war, soldiers began to return home. They were being demobilised, many of them carrying the wounds and scars from the 4 terrible years of war.
In 1922, the government passed a law which is called the 10-year law, which said the British Empire will not fight any major wars for the next 10 years. And amongst all this, in this time, this is when the fledgling Royal Air Force was trying to take to the skies. Basically, at the beginning of the First World War, the Royal Flying Corps and the Naval Air Service were providing air power for forces over the front line in France and Belgium. By 1918, as technology had advanced, there was a creation of the Royal Air Force, the first independent air force in the world. And the Royal Air Force came out of the First World War very proud, but then having to fight for its existence because of the 10-year rule and the lack of appetite. What did they do? Well, by the early 1920s, they'd found their own niche because they started to police places in the empire from the air instead of using ground forces and saving the government a huge amount of money.